The last round game. Taking into account the fact that I was white and that my opponent was the uncompromising Tolush, was bound to be a fighting game, and that is how it turned out. Hello chess lovers, Student here, and in this video I want to share with you another interesting attacking game played by Mikhail Tal. In this game Tal's opponent is Soviet chess grandmaster Alexander Tolush. The game was played at the 1957 USSR Championship. Both players were imaginative attackers, and following their encounters can never be boring. In this game Tal had white pieces and he opened up with c4, to which Tolush answered with knight f6, knight c3 g6, e4 d6, d4. King's Indian defense is on the board. Bishop g7, f3. We have the Saemisch variation, a very sharp line where white is usually castling queenside and is launching a kingside pawn storm, something which we are going to see in this game. e5, knight g2, knight bd7, bishop g5, c6, queen d2, black castled kingside, d5, c5. Well, Tolush is making a novelty. Usually in here black is capturing on d5, but in the game we see c5. But later we will see that actually Tolush won't get much by making this novelty. g4, there it goes. Meanwhile, Tal is hurrying with his attack. a6, knight g3, rook e8, h4, queen a5, bishop h6, knight f8, h5. White's attack looks very promising, right? Queen c7. We first saw queen a5 and then queen c7, and looks like that Tolush's lack of ideas and he's burning time. Yes, in these razor sharp positions, losing a precious tempo can sometimes be suicidal. Bishop d3, b5, and Tal castled queenside. At this point, even winning a pawn is playable. That of course is exposing the queenside, but even in that case, black can't do much. There is not much counterplay from black side. Instead, Tal chose castling queenside. B takes c4. Yes, instead it's Tal who is making a pawn sacrifice, and here we have bishop b1. Bishop takes c4 is an alternative, but Tal's Hawkeye spotted that leaving this bishop on b1 h7 diagonal can be more useful. Bishop h8, rook g1, rook b8, knight f5. Moves like this can be seen very often when facing such structures, fianchettoed bishop. And this is not even a piece sacrifice, because after she takes f5, once white is managing to open up the g file, black's position will collapse very quickly. Instead, to knight f5 we see knight d7 answered, bishop g5, freeing the h file, and already white's next move can be h takes g6, bishop g7, with which Tal was very happy, and by going for knight takes g7 he removed black's dark squared bishop, which could be very useful when organizing the defense, and this time we have f4. Another pawn is stepping forward in hope of weakening black's position further. It takes f4, queen takes f4, queen d8. Black is offering this pawn on d6, but winning it can allow black to repel white's attack. Black can play rook b6 and then knight e5, and allowing the activation of black pieces is not that good. Suddenly that rook gets very active. That's why at this point Tal chose a more accurate continuation. We have h takes g6, knight takes g6, queen h2, knight to e5, bishop f4. A mistake by Tal, which is allowing black to consolidate his position and nearly equalize the game. Instead, it was better to move back the bishop either on e3 or on d2. The problem with bishop f4 is that this is blocking the f file. For example, in here by playing queen f6, black could repel white's attack. Queen takes h7 is not dangerous because of this king f8. And now imagine that the bishop were on e3. In that case, white could play rook f1, and yes, white is winning. And then bishop g5 check, winning the queen. But black underestimated the power of queen f6, and instead to bishop f4 answered with knight f8, protecting the pawn on h7, queen h6, knight g6, bishop g5, f6. And now as we have reached the critical position, please pause the video and try to find Tal's next move. Ready? Well, let me remind you the good old quote. When you are attacking, all your pieces should join the party, and in here Tal made a pawn sacrifice in order to open up this bishop's diagonal and also in order to free the e4 square for the knight. And this is not only a pawn sacrifice but also a piece sacrifice, right? If, for example, f takes g5, then this beast is jumping into the game and black's position collapses. There we have it. White can play rook f1 check, and then g takes f5. The game is over. Black king is in a mating net. In our game to e5, black answered with rook takes e5. But anyways, there comes bishop takes g6. Black knight is overloaded and black is in trouble. Rook b7. Right now we have two hanging bishops, but at this point white is a piece up, right? There comes the knight e4. And now if, for example, h takes g6, then queen h8 check, followed by rook f1. And by playing knight e4, Tal targeted the pawn on f6. F takes g5. Finally, black is winning white's dark squared bishop, but is allowing white's rook to occupy the f file. The threat is rook takes f8. Let's just make a random move. If, for example, bishop takes g4, then white can go for rook takes f8. And then if here, then bishop takes h7. And then queen g6 check. And then queen takes d6. Yeah, black king is getting checkmated. King g8, rook h8 check. A nice tactical shot, emphasizing the vulnerability of black queen. And yes, if you won't accept, then this time queen takes f8 can come, followed by queen f6 checkmate. In our game to rook f1, black answered with rook takes e4, and interestingly already at this point rook takes f8 is not working because you no longer have a knight on e4. In this line, after queen g6 check, king e7, you no longer have a knight on e4, which could allow you to win the pawn on d6. That's why after rook takes e4, all Tal could do was to accept the exchange sacrifice. Bishop takes e4, rook g7. Black is trying to consolidate his position, but there is no way out, and already white rook is penetrating the 6th rank. Bishop takes g4, and there comes the second rook, and already white is refreshing this rook takes f8 threat. Black moved away his knight from f8 and lost the pawn on d6. Queen e7, rook takes a6. White is now busy with munching black pawns, and this time bishop takes h7 followed. If you accept the bishop sacrifice, then rook a8 can follow. To bishop takes h7, black answered with a desperate knight b8 move, and there comes a discovered check. King g8, and after bishop e6 check, finally we see a resignation. If bishop takes e6, then rook takes e6. If queen d7, then rook e1. Or rook h1 was also winning, and black king is getting checkmated. That's why finally after bishop e6 check, Alexander Tolush capitulated. That was a very strong attack by Mikhail Tal, which he launched just from the opening. The c5 novelty didn't justify itself, and Tolush's position collapsed very quickly. One thing is obvious, that when playing against Tal, one should not allow positions with opposite side castlings and pawn storms. In that case, Tal is simply unstoppable. In the end, a chess puzzle for you where the task is to find the winning line for white. It's white to move, and I will wait for your answers in the comment section. Thanks for watching. In the end, feel free to check out my early uploads as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care.